This is Willpower.
Oh, I am thankful to have the incredible Leslie Kenny on the Willpower podcast today. We've been chatting and chatting before we even hit the record button, and I was like, we have to hit record. So welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Kristin. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to dive into longevity and the conversation around primeadine, spermidine, all of those things as well. But we were just talking about this amazing thing, which is females and aging and what we need to do to be able to stay young and vital and feeling our best in our skin no matter what age we are. So talk to us about your birthday coming up and what you were just telling me.
Well, I'm going to be 60 on the 22nd of June. And I almost can't believe it because for me, I grew up at a time when being 60 meant, big gray hair hairstyles with lots of hairspray. Do you remember your grandmother might have had tons of hairspray, going to the hairdresser every week to get it sort of fluffed out? I'm thinking like Margaret Thatcher hair, really. Yeah. And even if we think back to the Golden Girls, and I think most of us watched that show at some point, the youngest woman on there was Blanche, who I think was meant to be 55. And if I think about Blanche today, that character, I think, looks like 65 or 70 to me.
Yeah.
We are just aging better. And this was underscored by a report that the IMF put out, which said they were looking at the fact that so many economies around the world are aging rapidly right now. But they said that today, a 72-year-old has the same cognition as a 53-year-old 20 years ago. So in other words, 70 is the new 50, and that's just in 20 years. So we're taking, I think, better care of ourselves. If you're 72, you are part of the boomer generation. I was born in 1965, so depending on which country I'm in, if I'm in France, they consider me a boomer. If I'm in the US, I'm Gen X. But it's this group, this cohort of people have looked after themselves better. They're not drinking or smoking as much as their grandparents. And in addition, boomers are the generation that want to be the rebels, right? They introduce casual Friday. They introduce wearing blue jeans everywhere, even when you're not supposed to wear blue jeans. They got rid of their ties.
Yeah.
So this is a generation that wants to defy what it means and looks like to be 60, 70, and 80. We're going to do it differently, and I hope that paves the way for everybody who comes after us.
Yeah, and if we were going to talk about, and we'll unpack this for sure, but from a quick fire sort of answer, if there's like three things that you think, and specifically we'll talk about women, this is of course everyone who's aging, but if there's like three things, if there's three things that come up for you that are like, what are the keys from a quick fire things? Like, what are the three things that you think first of all, anyone who hasn't, number one, get on YouTube and watch this because you'll see that Leslie looks younger than most people I know. And so many articles have been written about her as like, genetically the youngest person or just, telomere length, probably the youngest person in the UK.
It's my biological age. I think that was it.
Yeah.
That's it. But I think what I want to do is just be living proof that you can be 60, you can have a biological age of 21, you can have a history like I did where I was diagnosed with these multiple autoimmune conditions and told I had 5 years left to live. That does not have to be your fate. I was also told I was infertile and I would never carry a baby. And I did that and delivered my youngest at age 43. My eldest is adopted. So it's, you are not your diagnosis, your prognosis is not set in stone. And that is the case. Even if you don't have a life-changing diagnosis like I did, so what, you're 70. You don't have to be 70 the way your father or your grandfather was. You can be your own kind of 70. And that means being vibrant and healthy. And for women in particular, for me, you asked about the three things I think are really important.
Yeah.
BHRT. Something like only 4% of all women who can get it are on it. This is, for me, a total scandal because it really levels the playing field when we look at a disease like Alzheimer's.
And just to clarify for people who are listening, we're talking about bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, just for anyone who doesn't know the acronym. Yeah, exactly.
So the old HRT, hormone replacement therapy, that was based on synthetics, and they were purified. Some parts were purified from horse, female pregnant mare urine, and that did not. A lot of women didn't feel good on it. My mother was one of them. That is the one that was studied where people said, oh, there might be a breast cancer risk increase. BHRT, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, is made from yams and from soy. And these are three-dimensional molecular mimics of the ones that we make in our body. And replacing them has been shown in studies to decrease our risk of Alzheimer's disease so that it matches that of men. Why is that important? It's because women have twice the risk of getting Alzheimer's disease than men do. Really unfair, right? But we have these estrogen receptors absolutely everywhere in our body, and one place is in our brain. Now, I think it's very important that we make sure we get that BHRT in the right window, because there is evidence that if we start it too late, we can miss that window. And it might actually, there was at least one study that came out that indicated it might be more harmful to start later in life. But BHRT is my number one. I'm glad that you're
unpacking this, because I think that there's a lot of conversation. Well, we know there's a lot of conversation around it. And quite often I get asked about, like, is it yam? Is it soy? Is it pig? Is it what are the directions I need to be going? And there are multiple opinions, right? I think there's lots of ways that the compounding is, at least here in Austin and with some of the clients I work with just in North America, the compounding pharmacies are using lots of different things. And then there's also the scare, right? The scare about one part of, estradiol or like E2, E3, like certain things being dangerous or cancer causing, and some of the older studies that were challenging around breast cancer, and then some other studies that people are bringing to the table. And so this is what I think is in some ways maybe the holdback for some women, that they're afraid of adding this exogenous thing to their body in some way. And I will also say, and I don't know if you've seen this in the UK, but there were times when I was looking a bit into sort of like the whole fertility thing and how I would get pregnant and going through a very reputable referral, someone here who teaches all around birthing and doula work, and getting a very reputable referral for a woman in Chicago, and then paying quite a large amount of money for a consult call. And then this woman having me like order things on Amazon that were like pumps and creams and lotion and put them on my inner thigh to like boost my numbers and it just felt like I just took after like a second call and a week or two of like what she was selling me or telling me to do, it felt like this doesn't feel correct. Like I sent a picture to her team saying, I just took the pump that you told me to buy and I took a piece of paper towel and I put 10 in a row, and each one of those is a different amount. Like by significant, like maybe it's a grain of rice. Maybe it's 3 grains of rice. Maybe it's, you know what I mean? In size.
And it makes a difference. The dose makes
the different dose.
Sure, or the poison, right?
Yeah. And so I think that I want to shout that out, because I think a lot of women either in the fertility window or in the HRT perimenopausal window, or, I think, and I'd love to hear your opinion. I know Dr. Amy Killen talks a lot about like start before you need it, or as you're just seeing waning happening, or in your 40s, start beginning this. And I want to unpack some of that to the level with which you're comfortable unpacking that.
Absolutely. Well, I started with DHEA and pregnenolone probably in my, how old was I? I was in my 40s. So mid 40s, I started with those. And then I was able to move on to BHRT probably around age 51. And you do want to get it as soon as any of the symptoms begin to start, if you can. I think Dr. Killen is right. If you notice that your bleeds aren't lasting very long, there's like 6 months between them, maybe 4 or 5 months, that's the time you want to have that conversation with your doctor, because it's around that time that you might find, oh, it took 4 months. It was 4 months between my last cycle and this one, but the next one might not come for 8 months. So you do want to get on it early if you can. So there's that protective window. But like I said, I took pregnenolone and DHEA on my doctor's recommendation before I did that. And I think that was actually very helpful. They're both precursors to all of the sex hormones, not just estrogen, progesterone, but also testosterone. So they can be very helpful. And we all know about the mood changes that we experience around this time. They do help with that progesterone, I know you've discussed this with your tribe before, but progesterone is so calming, so grounding, gives you that wonderful sleep that you need. And de-stressing. I mean, a lot of the women that I work with who finally get on it are like, okay, not only can I sleep better, but during the course of the day, I'm like a bit more like even or calm or settled. Yeah.
And the one thing I would shout out as well, and this is something I learned from experience, because about, it's like 10 years ago, I went on DHEA, sort of, it's very white lab coat syndrome. I went on DHEA, like a sublingual yam spray. Okay. And I broke out kind of everywhere.
It was too much for you. Acne.
Just like, they were like, this is the nurse who was like filling it or giving it to me at the time was like, this changed my life. Right. And the doctor was like, you need to go on this. And so a little bit shame on me in the sense that I was going through like a whole biohacking protocol with a lab, but I wasn't keeping my general practitioner in the loop. And my general practitioner was like, when I finally got back around to him, he's like, I would have never let you go on that off of one lab pull for bloods because it's a moment in time. And I would have wanted you to have, 2 over the course of, or pull each week of your cycle to see what's going on. And it was a really sage advice in many ways. And I'm not trying to scare women off DHEA, but I did break out from head to toe. And it took me about a year to clear it all because I was on the DHEA for like 3 months. And I think I didn't need it. It was like a lab pull that maybe I looked lower at or a different part of the cycle. Or they didn't even ask me what day in my cycle I was.
I wonder how much they gave you. Was it more than 5 milligrams? I mean, you can get up to 100
there. And when I went on so in some way I might say there's an energetic imprint for me knowing what DHA did to me there. So like that's part A. Part B is now I'm 10 years older and I like recently was like, okay, let me try DHEA about 8 months ago. I didn't even suggest it. I had a conversation with my practitioner here who's very knowledgeable. And I went on DHEA and it created what I would call like heightened states of anxiety and suicidal ideation. Woo. And I was having that, and I'm just sharing that transparently because I want to say this out loud, that I had to sort of chase and advocate for myself, going back to my doctor, reevaluating, saying, why am I having all these thoughts? What's going on with my heightened state? And getting back to finally, when you check the checkbox at the pharmacy, like you don't need a consult and you sign, I was like called the compounding pharmacist and said, every single time I checked the checkbox and said I didn't need a consult, I want all of those consults right now.
Yeah. Good for you.
We had a big conversation and she said that there's a small percentage of the population of females that when they're taking DHEA, it doesn't do the conversion to testosterone or estrogen. It sort of hits your adrenal complex. And it's pushing on the adrenals. And so I called my therapist because I was certainly in therapy at that point, just trying to keep myself some baseline going. And I had these conversations with a few other women. Again, this isn't about scaring people. I think DHA has helped so many people, but I just want to make sure that there is an awareness out there. We are playing with dosages. We are playing with our own physiology in a way that's so unique. And so asking and advocating continues to be the thing we always have to do, and making sure that we're working with the right people, which is what I think you and I are continuing to advocate for people we speak with.
Agreed. We're each bio-individual, so our response is going to vary from someone else's, right? Yeah. And I do think that for somebody like you, then maybe it makes more sense to look at ashwagandha, rhodiola. These things are hormone balancing as well. Even spermidine is hormone balancing too. So some other thing may be the answer. If somebody listening has experienced the acne, the mood swings, or, another side effect of having too much DHEA is hirsutism. That's just facial hair. God, we don't want that, right?
Exactly.
And so, the time when we want to feel more like feminine women, this is not when you want to find chin hairs. So, it's important to know that there are a whole range of reactions to these things. Hormones, as we all know as women, are very sensitive. And to whatever we expose our bodies to whatever conditions we expose our bodies to, right?
Yeah.
So pay attention when you take these. And, on that note, I will still advocate for yet another hormone as we go through this period, and that is thyroid hormone. So I am a hypothyroid patient, and it was really, for me, the missing piece in my fertility journey. One that the IVF doctors in the United States did not seem to cotton on to. My TSH, my thyroid stimulating hormone levels looked completely normal. And I was never asked about some of my clinical symptoms. I was only diagnosed based on blood. So if you are a woman, as we get older, both men and women will have less and less thyroid hormone production. And that will manifest in various ways. It might mean that our hair gets drier, more straw-like. It might be that we get more brain fog or cold hands, cold feet, lower blood pressure, and lower pulse. So for years, doctors would say, oh, your pulse is 50 beats per minute. You must be an athlete. What a wonderful heart rate. And I'd say, I have no energy to do anything athletic. I would not be able to skip a rope right now if you put it in my hands, And yet they didn't put two and two together. The mental exhaustion, the brain fog, I was having trouble even climbing upstairs. And these are all classic symptoms of hypothyroidism. So all of us will experience over time, just as our reproductive hormones go down, our thyroid hormones will also go down too. And so I urge everyone to check. And reference ranges vary wildly around the world. So here in the UK, some doctors won't treat you until, believe it or not, you hit over 10 on the TSH level. Whereas in the United States, I think it's 3.3. In France, I think it's 2.5. So imagine, you would have to be 4 times worse than a patient in France before you might get treatment in the UK.
Right.
That just shows you the variation. So thyroid hormone is, another thing I would definitely take a look at. And
so where are people wanting that to sit, let's just say in an ideal situation from the reference ranges, in your opinion?
Well, this is the problem, is the doctors will want you to be below 2.5. But you could still feel not great. And the reason why you might not feel great is that we have two very important thyroid hormones, are T4, which is the raw precursor to thyroid, the bioavailable thyroid hormone, and the other one is T3. T3 is the bioavailable form, and our receptors, every cell in our body has receptors for that T3 hormone. Now, you could have perfectly good TSH numbers, but feel really tired and sluggish. Why? Well, you might have high reverse T3. Now, reverse T3 is what our body produces when it senses that our metabolism needs to slow down. We might be in a situation where the body senses scarcity, famine, something like that. And the body says, well, I've got to conserve all of these resources on the body to keep this organism living. I'm going to turn the fire down in the body, turn the metabolism down. And it does that by producing reverse T3, and that then goes around the body and sits on our cells' T3 receptors and blocks the bioavailable T3 from getting into our cells.
So it's slowing the metabolism. And does it do this under heightened states of stress in various kinds?
Well, for me personally, it happens when I fast.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so, some women, you can talk to some women who say, I tried a 5-day water fast and I gained weight. My husband lost weight. What's up with that? Well, what's up with that is probably you might have been subclinically hypothyroid and your body has said, famine.
Yeah.
How do we survive famine? Let's increase reverse T3. And it's interesting. There was a guy, I believe at Johns Hopkins, who was looking at populations around the world that had survived famine, like the Irish, and said that these populations were more prone to hypothyroidism because they had experienced this historically. They knew how to survive a famine. Mm-hmm. So, if that was part of your ancestors' history,
Then it's in your cells.
It could be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is, that's why I say you can look at the TSH, but I always want to work with a practitioner who also listens to my clinical symptoms. Mm-hmm. Is there hair loss? Is there dry straw-like hair? Are there cold hands and cold feet, low body temperature, low pulse, low blood pressure, brain fog, fatigue, all classic symptoms of hypothyroidism.
Yeah, so important. I think this is a big flag we're waving the flag of advocacy and also finding the right practitioner, right? Someone who fits with you, someone who listens to you, someone who isn't just 15 minutes in and out. I just, I here in the US, I pay a little extra for I'm blessed to be able to pay a little extra for some concierge medicine so I can get a lower patient to doctor ratio and get some coaching that really makes sense for me. And I think this is like one of the things that I would say that, pay for it now if you can versus paying for it 5x later. And that's, it's like any relationship, but it can be so challenging to find the practitioner that's right for you. And also not being afraid to really speak up, to say the things like you talked about, hey, here are all the symptoms I'm having as well. This isn't going to cut it, right? Because you go in with a much larger knowledge base to talk to any medical practitioner and to be able to work it out and maybe say, hey, here's what I think. Yeah. But many of us can go in there and say, okay, well, this person's going to know better because this is what they do for the human body. And also advocate, because there's so many unlocked doors. There's so many unknowns. There's so many different, we're all so uniquely built in the world. And I think it's a really important thing to just shout out to the men and women, but women specifically who are listening around the aging space. Yeah,
100%. So when people ask me, where do I find such a practitioner? I always say, go to ifm.org. Mm-hmm. You probably do this too. And then don't take it blindly from there, but then go to the patient bulletin boards or to the reviews. What do other patients say about this doctor? Did the patient say, he or she listens to me? And the reason why is you don't want to be interpreted as just a bunch of numbers. Mm-hmm. You want a doctor who treats people, not data sets, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And that's really important. And yes, it's costly, but I've never been one to go in for these designer handbags or shoes or those things. I feel like my health is my wealth, and I wear that, and it's the best luxury good I could ever have. And an investment in that health is like investing in my future pension.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's a health pension.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about primeadine.
Oh, sure.
Just because I love it so much. And I've been for a number of years, of course, I've been taking the tablets, and for a number of years, I have this thing called the Wake Stack 3. Like there's just, I take all the containers of my powdered goods and I put them together in the morning so that I can just take 1 or 2 scoops out of one container instead of the early days where I'd be opening like 5 containers and doing the whole thing. And someone said to me along the way, like, if you give it a good name, it's like even more exciting. So I'm like, okay, my Wake Stack 3 has always had 3 things in it. And that's aminos, cholesterol, and creatine. And then I got sent recently your powder. And I was like,
yes, the primeadine powder.
Yes, the primeadine powder. And now it's a Wake Stack 4. And I'm very good at taking the tablets. I'm pretty good, but like traveling and all, I can't always take all the bottles and now I'm like, this is so evident. This needs to be in my stack every single day, just from a longevity perspective and all of that I was stoked to put it in a Wake Stack. And now I got to call it the Wake Stack 4.
Nice.
As primeadine in it, right? So it's like getting the ratios right. And then I always travel with that container that has the mix together, which is just so exciting for me. So I'm so thankful that you guys came out with the powder, which I'm pretty, I'm good with tablets. I can swallow pills, and also the ease and convenience of having that in a morning stack. And it's really what I suggest for people who are putting together their pills and powders, is try to create something that you can easily take, right? Because it doesn't do you any good if it's sitting on the shelf.
Yeah, compliance is really a big thing. And a lot of people don't like swallowing tablets or capsules. So the whole point of bringing out the powder was literally just getting rid of the little, vegan capsules that Primeadine Original had. And we never put any fillers or flow agents into our capsules. And this just made it simpler for people to add. They could put it on top of their acai bowl, on top of granola. They can put it on top of ice cream if they want. It actually tastes pretty good. And when I was in Portugal earlier this year at a Six Senses resort in Douro Valley, and I helped co-curate a longevity dinner with them, with their head chef. And she was like, "Oh, can we put it into ice cream?" I was like, "Sure, you can put it into ice cream, And so he made spermidine and honey ice cream.
I feel like that sounds amazing. Also, he's like making the ice cream from scratch. It's like
he was making it from scratch using the milk from A2 cows, and it was actually a real treat because he used to work for Joel Robuchon in Macau, and Joel Robuchon is one of the great chefs, French chefs. In any event, you can take the powder, just put it into a smoothie. One of my favorites is actually where you take frozen blueberries, frozen strawberries, a little bit of collagen, peptides, and you can add creatine in there, and then the primeadine and some almond milk, and blend it all up. And it makes this great ice cream, like a smooth ice cream consistency. It's really nice. And it feels like a treat. You haven't added any sugar other than what's naturally in the blueberries and the strawberries, low glycemic index, lots of polyphenols from those two fruit. And you buy it frozen, so it's cheaper as well.
I always find it to be more flavorful as well when you get the organic stuff frozen, just because they don't have to pull it so early to get to you. So,
and it never gets moldy, right? I've never had a moldy frozen blueberry. So, so that's a great way to do it. But for people who are older and don't like swallowing pills, just pill fatigue, this is a great solution.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I want to talk a little bit about specifically what spermidine is and does. And we did talk about this. For anyone who's listening now, who really wants to unpack Leslie's story of the early days, such a really from trauma to triumph in many ways, the story of you and the fire, and learning and talking more about autophagy, episode 28. Can you believe it's episode 28 and now we're like episode 130 or something?
Wow.
So it's
You've come a long way, Kristin.
We've stood the test of time together, Leslie.
Yeah.
We're aging gracefully and we're just getting episodes done. But yeah, the episode 28 on the Well Power podcast is around autophagy. It is really the most beautiful story of how you all the things you had to witness as a child and grow up and through navigating your own trauma and really stepping forward into the space and the place you are, which is such a leader in the space for longevity and healing, and for women as well. Just like from the female perspective, I look at you as someone globally who's just sort of leading the charge and showing us all the best way that we can be as we grow. But I want to talk a little bit about spermidine, just specifically for those people who don't quite fully understand it, and how it supports the body, and the ways that we can talk about it as fuel for some of the system.
Sure. So again, I won't go through my whole origin story, but I came across spermidine actually because of the fact that I am an autoimmune patient, and learned about some work that was being done at the Kennedy Institute for Rheumatology here at the University of Oxford, and I live in Oxford, England, and they were using this awkwardly named compound, spermidine, to basically inhibit inflammation and activate the cell renewal and recycling process known as autophagy in mice and elderly mice. And they were able to actually rejuvenate senescent immune cells in these mice. And that is what's so fascinating. And they've now done this in elderly human immune cell lines, which is, that's incredible. We have also tested primeadine specifically, and we can show that primeadine does the same thing too.
Can we unpack that a little bit too, the senescent immune cell thing, so we put it in layman terms?
Yeah. So your cells have a limited number of times that they can replicate before they begin making mistakes. And the classic example of this is, it's a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. And when it hits that limit, that's known as the Hayflick limit. And cells, the body then says to these cells, hey, you know what? You're getting older. It's time to put you in retirement. We're going to tell you to just sit down over there. And sometimes I describe this as, when you go to a wedding and you've got this older, slightly quirky uncle who just drinks too much. And he's had too much to drink. And everybody's like, what do we do with Uncle John? I know, let's just park him over in the corner where he's going to do as little harm as possible. But we all know that if Uncle John continues to drink and wakes up, he's going to start making lewd comments or inappropriate comments at the wedding, and he's going to spoil it for everybody else. Well, that's what a senescent cell is. If a senescent cell is just sitting there, it's not actually quietly sitting there. It's actually releasing this thing called SASP, which is an inflammatory compound that infects all the other cells around it. And when that happens, you're triggering this cascade of inflammation, even in healthy cells. So what we really want is to find a way to reverse this senescence if we can. Now, you can create cell death, that's apoptosis, and senolytics like fisetin and quercetin will actually kill those cells off. So that's one way to stop the inflammatory secretions coming out. But what do you do in, say, the heart, where we have a very limited number of cardiomyocytes? Those are the cells that govern the rhythm of the heart. And they only replace themselves at age 25. Only 1% of all the cardiomyocytes ever replace themselves per year. By my age 60, only 0.5% are replacing themselves each year. So what we want is not for them to die off. We actually need to keep them. We need to have them undergo autophagy if it's possible. And if they've already entered senescence, we want to reverse that senescence and keep them if we can. So that's one of the things that Spermidine can do. And with these immune cells that have kind of been around the block a few times, well, they know who the bad players are, right? They've seen, let's say, COVID. They've seen, strep. They've seen all these things, or classically strep from high school, right? Kissing or something. And so they know these things. You don't want them to go away. You want to, bring them back, bring that knowledge back. And that was what Spermidine was doing in the lab. And that was really exciting to me because, again, as an autoimmune patient, one of the problems is that your immune cells they're dysfunctional. And we need to hit reset and get them to be functioning properly again. So I looked at that research and then discovered loads of other research. For instance, that cardiomyocytes preferentially take up Spermidine because they want the autophagy, and that it was also good for other things like bone health. Yes, there are some beauty benefits to hair, nails, because Spermidine will, at least our Spermidine, our food-derived Spermidine, we know will increase keratin because we've seen it with, the lab rats. So these were happy lab rats that got more lush fur and beautiful, strong nails than the control group of rats.
I do also, I notice it in me, and I do hear that as one of the biggest things that people are noticing, because this is the other challenge in some ways, right? Is like we don't always notice instantaneously when we're adding something like this to our diet as a supplemental nutrition piece. And the other thing that just blows my mind is that the whole the whole reason I even know about this or have known about this for years and years is because of you. Because you were like, hey, there's something, it's working. We're not talking about it. Let's talk about it. And you really have been banging the drum over and over again. So the whole reason this sort of marketplace even exists is because the passion that you've had for this. How does that make you feel? Does that make you feel like it's wild?
It is wild.
Inventor? Like even though we understood it existed, it's like you were like, no, but the world needs to know.
Yeah, we were first into the U.S. market with the food-derived spermidine, and a couple of people have said, "You're the spermidine queen," and I'm like, "Yeah, do I want to be the spermidine queen?" But actually, because I have a past life in sexology as well, it's okay for me to be called that. I just think it's so powerful, and nobody's really talking about it. People are talking about NMN and NAD, and yet I met a scientist at the University of Oslo who is studying NMN, and he said, oh yeah, older mitochondria need more NMN. But actually, if you activate autophagy and mitophagy to rejuvenate the mitochondria, then those cells are young again and they don't need NMN. And I'm thinking, okay, I think that's an important thing to underscore, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the fact that spermidine inhibits at least 9 of the 12 pathways down which we age, the so-called hallmarks of aging, that's big for me. And like you, I don't have time to put loads of things into my stack. I look at what Brian Johnson does and I think, okay, that's good for him. To each their own. That's not me. My life cannot revolve around my stack. And I'm not going to take 100 tablets a day. I probably take max 20, and that includes my thyroid medication. So I need to find more bang for your buck, right?
Yeah.
So that's what this is, really. And it's in food. So I do want to encourage everyone to try and get it from their food if possible, because then you're getting the 3-dimensional molecular mimic that your body is looking for. There's a lot of synthetic spermidine on the market, and that is not going to fit in those receptors the way that the body's looking for. It's like a lock and key, or Lego, if Lego doesn't fit perfectly. So you want to get it from food. Ours is also a food-derived spermidine, and I wanted it to be specifically from food because it has better bioavailability and it comes with naturally co-occurring polyamines like spermine and putrescine. They all work together synergistically to recycle. They're part of a recycling pathway. So you take 1 milligram of this food-derived spermidine in with these cofactors, and you're getting much more than just 1 milligram because it can recycle into itself. But if you take the synthetic, it lacks these other cofactors that allow you to do it, as well as not being the 3-dimensional molecular mimic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a little bit about spermidine. I think that, just to think about the conversation we had earlier about women and getting older, one of the things that it helps with is it seems to improve hormones, almost like an adaptogen. And I'm saying that not as a scientist, not as a clinician, but that's, the reports we get back are like this. And there was a study done in Canada where they noticed a decrease in cortisol over a 30-day period in men and women. And they also noticed an increase in DHEA, pregnenolone, and all of the 3 reproductive hormones in women, and then testosterone in men. And I thought that was really interesting. And then sleep. Sleep is so underrated. It's free, but none of us take advantage of it. Netflix is just such a big competitor. And even the CEO of Netflix says that his biggest competitor is sleep. Yeah. But, our circadian rhythm goes slightly out of whack as we get older. And that's why I think many of us know of some elderly aunt that needs the radio on all night. She can't get to sleep. She sleeps 4 hours only, 5 hours only. Well, Spermidine helps because it impacts at least 2 of the 8 clock genes that modulate circadian rhythm. So they seem to make you more sensitive. Now, those are animal studies I'm talking about. We don't have them in humans yet, but it explains a lot of the reports that we get from people who say, I don't know why, but my sleep is so much better. It's not, and again, it's not, variations will occur in responses, but we get a lot of people talking about sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were talking about getting it from food sources, I think this is sort of like the double header too, right? Is like taking the supplement and then also having the food source. I mean, there's just what are the top 2 or 3 places that people can get this from their food?
Well, if you are by a Japanese market or an Asian market, look for something called natto, Natto. And that is a fermented Japanese soy dish. It's considered a delicacy in Japan, kind of like Stilton cheese is here in the UK, but it's got a very particular smell, a very unusual mouthfeel. It's very cobwebby. But if you can stomach it, that would be a great place to get it from. And that's the highest food source. Then you can get it from wheat germ. But if you're going to get it from wheat germ, please look for a clean source where they refrigerate the wheat germ after processing, because it goes rancid so quickly. That's why bakers don't like it.
Yeah, and are people navigating in that? It's like rancidity, is that the right word? And mold. Yeah. And then also, is there a glyphosate issue there?
There can be. It really depends. So we don't get ours from the United States. We get ours from Japan, and they don't. It's illegal in Japan to spray your crops with glyphosate for drying, and that's a very common practice in the United States. We get everything from Japan to avoid that. And
but
then
this is a good note for people who are looking to get wheat germ. And like, I remember when I was young, my mom would sprinkle like wheat germ on her yogurt or something. And just knowing that the sourcing is important. Yeah.
Yeah, that was around the time of Earth shoes, right? I remember her shoes. That's so and the
funny.
Pacer, the car. Yeah. Anyway, so that would be a good source. But mushrooms, lentils, legumes, peas, they're wonderful sources. And I know some people are afraid of legumes, but, you can soak them. And if it's really problematic, you can kind of sprout. But these are good sources. And I'm gluten-free, but wheat is a good source of, wheat germ is a good source of spermidine. So that's, I do add it back in there.
Yeah, and you also have both product extensions now, right? You have the one that is the standard regular. I happen to have a gluten-free bottle here, but there's a primeadine in the regular bottle.
Yeah, I've got this one. Yeah,
a gluten-free one. Yeah, so it's like both of them exist in the world. If you feel like you have celiac, you have issues with gluten, or you just want to stay gluten-free, there's a modified version that is for everyone.
Exactly. That was really developed specifically for other autoimmune patients who were on the autoimmune paleo protocol. Yeah. And we're trying to avoid lectins like tomatoes, potatoes, and of course, gluten and wheat.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's stunning. And it's part of my desert island stack now. Yeah, so I want to, and I'm not just, I'm feeling it too, as along and around the women in the like 35 to 50, 60-year-old bracket of podcast circles, that more and more we're all talking about this supplement. So it's really been beautiful to see a food-derived supplement of this nature and your work expand and expand and expand, be shouted out across the airwaves everywhere I go. I want to turn a bit to some of the other practices because you don't get blown up in the press in the way that you have for having the youngest biological age without doing other practices besides this, right? Besides making sure that you're taking care of the way that you're advocating for your doctors, your nurse practitioners, your medical support, and the way that you are supplementing with food and primeadine. Yeah. But there are other things that you're doing in your life, and we want to hear about that because you have the key to the door we all want to unlock.
Well, number one, my overarching goal since 2004, when I got my autoimmune diagnoses, the lupus, the RA, it was really just decreasing inflammation. And inflammation is one of the hallmarks of aging, but it was a really big one for me. My inflammation was out of control. And my immune system was triggered by absolutely every and anything. It could have been poor sleep, could be stress, could have been trauma, and food. So I have eaten really clean. I don't drink. I know that's hard for people. Somebody commented the other day, I was in Spain and I just wasn't drinking. And I wasn't eating the bread because I avoid the gluten. And they said, wow, you're really good with this. And also sugary desserts, I avoid. And I just thought, I'm used to it. My taste buds have changed. Alcohol doesn't do anything for me. It makes me feel like I've been poisoned. And I can get a high without having to drink. For people who have trouble with that kava maybe, right? There are other things you can do. Get some more L-theanine to just relax yourself. But it's not a stimulant. I knew it was toxic for me, so I stay away from it. And
do you all have so many things on the market there as we do? Well, I know that Seedlip's over there and a couple other brands.
Oh, Seedlip is great. They're British.
They're British. They're doing their thing, but they're over there. And then we have like beautiful wineries in the Hamptons and things that are now doing like a non-alcoholic sparkling Chenin Blanc style, but
amazing.
Of course there's going to be some carbohydrates in it, but also you can pour it in a glass and it feels like joyful. And I went and bought, there's a place called Wolfer Estates in the Hamptons, and I went and was like, I really love this sparkling white they have. It's non-alcoholic. Nice. And I just ordered a case of it. And now I can go down to my pool and feel like I'm pouring a little bubbles, but it's not none of the next day stuff, none of the challenge, and it feels nice. I bring it to parties even because we're all biohackers here in Austin. So nobody's really drinking so much anymore. And the kava is a great example. I don't love the taste always. It depends on where you go and what you get, but so many ways to do mocktails.
Mocktails. And we're doing, this weekend, we've got our Smart Aging Summit at the University of Oxford at Rhodes House. And we're doing a longevity dinner with a local restaurant. And we're doing longevity mocktails for everybody who comes. And it doesn't have to be alcoholic, and it can be fun, I think we all have to learn to celebrate with each other without needing the alcohol to reduce our inhibitions. If we can find some other way, it would be good. So reducing inflammation, that is a big part of what I have done really for the last 20 years. Sleep, now I can see your Aura Ring. I've got mine on. Yeah. I do really watch it closely, and I'm always looking for 90 minutes of deep and REM sleep. I consistently do that with the deep, the REM, usually more around an hour. So I've got to work on that. But I am looking at that. And, I had a chili pad to get the temperature just right. As I went through menopause, I did have the heat fluctuations. I did need to have the chili pad. That was really great for me. And of course, blackout blinds. That's what Dave Asprey was always saying, blackout blinds everywhere. Turn the lights out. I've got a red screen on I just have to triple click the button on my iPhone and it goes all red, which is great. So if you're checking your time at night, you're not getting dazzled. All that blue light is not, telling your body to produce cortisol because it's time to wake up. Stopping your melatonin. I also go to see my doctor every, 6 to sometimes it'll go as long as 9 months, but generally it's every 6 months. And I'm just checking those levels of inflammation, making sure that I don't have I don't want it to creep up on me, and I don't want to go out of remission. Obviously, that's a vulnerability, is to get the RA or the lupus or, the Hashimoto's, which was diagnosed afterwards.
And you were in a bit of pain from the rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh, I could feel it. That's why I went to the doctor. I could feel it. This is what's
so exciting is someone who's feeling it, knowing it, and then having it dissipate, right? That's
go
the thing
away, disappear. Yeah. And that's what's so remarkable. Our bodies are these beautiful miracles. And if we just listen to the signs they give us 24/7, that twinge, what does that mean, right? That that pain, that burning sensation, what is it telling us? Rather than trying to suppress these symptoms, embrace them and learn from them. What do I have to do different to get these things to go away?
Yeah.
And my whole philosophy in treating my autoimmunity was not around suppressing my immune system, which was the classic medical protocol, right? Take immunosuppressants, knock the immune system down. So, it can't destroy your organs, tissues, and joints, but also you can't fight infection. No, I wanted to reset my immune system. And I did that with this intravenous immunoglobulin, this transfusion, basically of antibodies from thousands of patients, thousands of donors. And that reset my immune system. So, take away what makes you weak, give your body what makes it stronger.
Yeah, it's like really, and also I'm sure that it took you some time to find that specific, like going to have that protocol and knowing that would work for you and digging up the information around it so that it like applied to you and will actually help. I think sometimes we do things and they don't help, right? That's like, this is part of the game, which is maybe they're even helping and we're just not feeling it,
Yeah, N equals 1, right? Rather than looking at a study that helped the majority of people who might not have been people like me, do your own N equals 1 experiment, right? Yeah. And you can feel it. You can also work with a doctor to do labs and see what's happening. And the patient bulletin boards for me were a godsend. Rather than having doctors say, "Oh, this is what you should do," based on the evidence. And of course, a lot of the evidence is it's funded by pharmaceutical companies who have an agenda to put across. And not to say that's a bad thing. I'm not anti-pharmaceutical, but it still bothers me that so few people know about IVIG when it can be life-changing. Yeah. And that they're put on these immune suppressants. Later, they get put on methotrexate, which is terrible for a woman's eggs. Mm-hmm. And
IVIG is how are you taking IVIG?
Well, I only did it twice. I did this in 2004, 2005. It's transfusion, takes about 4 hours. And I did it because I learned about on the patient bulletin boards, the lupus patient bulletin boards, that a study had been conducted in 2000 in Germany with 13 lupus patients. They all were given IVIG and every single one got better. And right, they all improved.
The proof is in the pudding of 13 people. And then, noting always where these studies are funded. And also that's a pretty clear sign that you would want to research that more. And then what did your doctors have responses to it? Like,
oh, they said no. So I had to find another doctor. I found a doctor in San Francisco. I was living in Boulder, Colorado at the time. Doctor said no. But that's never the end of the story. Do not think if a doctor says no, right, you get a second, third, fourth, fifth opinion. Look for the right doctor. It's kind of like on Bumble, right? You've got to find
dating.
It's like dating, right?
Earlier. It's like so you got to swipe left on that doctor and find a new one.
Exactly. That's how we should do it. Why do you think that the first one that is, on our street corner covered by insurance, that they're the right one for us? We put more thought into dating than we do our doctors, for sure, right?
Yeah.
This has life-changing consequences. So I found a doctor in San Francisco who was willing to prescribe it for me, really for the purpose of resetting my immune system. I did that. And when I finished my second transfusion, I thought, I'd changed my diet, my sleep. I did all the trauma work. I was doing healing visualizations. I was doing all of it. I thought, I'm really clean right now. I'm going to stop these immune suppressants because I hate them. And they philosophically don't sit right with me. I have more faith in the body's ability to heal as long as it is in balance. And IVIG should put my immune system into balance. And I'm going to remove the triggers to it, right? All the stuff that makes me weak, remove all that, give it the stuff that makes it strong. And when I went back, I didn't have RA or lupus.
So wild. And we just spell it for the listeners, IVIG, spell it so that they're looking for it. They can understand what to ask their doc about.
Sure. It's intravenous, intravenous, immunoglobulin, immunoglobulin. And the abbreviation for it is IVIG, but people call it IVIG.
IVIG.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel like we didn't really touch on that before. And I love hearing those, that there's just from the patient boards and all of that, like where you're such a researcher at heart. It's so beautiful. You're like, I'm going to find the answer and the solution to it all. It's like, so.
Well, I know it's out there. It's out there, right?
It's out there. The body can find a way to heal, and we got to give it the right support in order to do so. Yeah. So we've talked a lot about advocating for your health, BHRT, like hormone replacement therapy, where and what works, and how we get to find the right swipe on the doctor list for who the functional medicine practitioner is for us. We've talked a lot about this whole notion of your beautiful product, primeadine, the molecule Spermidine, and the way that it's supporting the body's longevity and aging well. And we've talked about sleep and a lot of other little nuanced things in there. Is there one other thing that you think in your life you're doing that revolves around other humans or community, or sticking your face in cold water? Or is there anything else that you do that you feel like is a must do in order to keep yourself feeling just not just biologically young, but just feeling young and joyful?
Yeah, joy. I think that's the operative word. And look for a way to engage in something meaningful with other people. There was a fabulous study that came out of Japan recently. It was a group of older people. I believe they were 70s and 80s. And for 12 weeks, they were dancing with each other. And they looked at their microbiome composition before they started dancing and then afterwards. And we know that when we hug, when we kiss, we're exchanging, microbes, right? We're exchanging bacteria. And what was fascinating was that by the end of those 12 weeks, some of the people had populations of Akkermansia muciniphili, which we all know there are supplements you can take of it. It's very hard to get. And even people who had started out with no discernible population of Akkermansia, by the end they had some. And it was something you could identify as statistically significant. And I thought that's something we don't talk about. God, we're humans, we're social animals. We can't just be interacting with our phones the whole time. I mean, AI is great, tech is great, but we need each other. And actually, we do better. It's a win-win for us when we interact with each other. And that study, it isn't just that the people were enjoying themselves exercising, which is obviously like a pill itself, but their microbiota was getting better. So that would be my last thing.
I love that. I want to tell everybody to get out there and go dancing.
Yeah.
Or whatever it might be. Yeah, just like a little entanglement with other social human beings where it's consensual.
Yeah, exactly. Of course. Yeah, 100%.
Incredible. I'm going to ask you the last question I always ask on the podcast, which I in due diligence didn't go listen to your last answer, which on episode 28, I'm going to have to go back and listen. But I like to ask everyone who comes on the show, and I wonder if your mentality or thought on this has shifted, but just really if you could go back to your teenage self and say, hey, Leslie, this is a bit of advice that's going to keep you going, moving forward, and standing in your own wellness, your own well power. What would that piece of advice be that you give to young Leslie?
I think now, and it's been a while since we did that last one, I think I would say, believe in yourself and your instincts and your own truth. Don't try to bend yourself to be someone else's truth.
Yeah, I love that. That resonates with me a lot right now. It's just standing more and more in the way that I get to speak to people and sharing how I feel. And I see that from you a lot. We've had a lot of beautiful conversations. You've been so supportive to my heart in general, just as a friend from across the pond, and also when we run into each other at conferences. So Thank you for sharing and speaking your truth and leading into helping so many people preemptively before there are challenges, and also people who are having challenges, just not only with this product, but just with all the ways that you speak and show up. Because it's just, it's so beautiful to watch.
Thank you.
And then I just had a moment in my mind where I said, I'm asking you to speak to your younger self, and she's already here.
Yeah, that's the good news is 60 can be the new 20, right?
Yeah.
You do have to work for it, but give your body what it needs, what makes it stronger, and take away what makes it weak. And it might just reward you with a blessing of good health and an even a younger second half of life.
I love that. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today.
100%. Thank you too, Kristin.